Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our latest webinar. It's 12 o'clock, so let's get started today. And today we're going to be talking about accessibility. And I'm joined today by Richard Jones from West Yorkshire Police, who will be introducing his role in a few moments. I do have Simon Fountain from the NEP on the line as well, who will join in as we get going. I'll pop Simon up on screen now. He just turned his camera off on me, so he wasn't available. Now he's back again, so there we go. So thanks everybody for joining, and hopefully we'll get into a really good half hour. And really important that you do ask your questions in the chat while we've got Richard in the room with us and Simon in the room, so you can actually put your points to them. So we're going to be hearing from Richard from West Yorkshire Police, who've going to be sharing his experience of using the Microsoft 365 capabilities in terms of enabling officers and staff with the technology who've got some accessibility needs, who need that extra help to do their role, to participate in conversations, but also to use some of the key tools that we've got along the way. We've also got Jolie from Microsoft, who's going to be answering some questions in the chat, and if we need to, we'll bring her in to the session as well, so we're going forward. So there's a lot to cover in this half hour. It's not going to be over techy. It's going to be more about Richard explaining the journey that he's been on and the impact it's had in force, which I think is really important to help spring to life and perhaps inspires you to move forward. We have built today actually in the NEP Enabling Centre, and the link will be in the chat so you can actually get access to it or request access to it, our own little accessibility area in the Enabling Centre, which means that you can start to use some of this functionality. So you'll see it there on screen. If I just pop that onto the screen, there you go. So there's a little accessibility intro and some of the accessibility tools that are built into learning pathways that you can use to help demonstrate to your team what your functionality is there. So again, you can actually build this on your own SharePoint site to make accessibility more visible in your own force. So we'll pick up on that a little bit later on. So perhaps I think let's get started with Richard. What's your role, and what sort of challenge have you got around accessibility?
Afternoon, David. Afternoon, everyone. My role, I'm a business analyst within the IT department at West Yorkshire Police. Primarily, I'm a business analyst on the numerous projects that the IT department are working on. And for me, this was a later life ambition to be an IT professional. I actually did a full career as a police officer first, so I came to this very late in the day, and I don't particularly like technology, believe it or not, even though I work in IT. But what does motivate me about technology, and in fact smart design, is the way that it can help people, make the job easier, change lives, do something really positive. And at that point, for me, the ones and zeros get really exciting, and that's kind of what kicked this off for me.
So what has the implementation of 365 done in terms of helping you do your role in helping colleagues?
Okay, I just need to step back in time a little. So we began our 365 Windows 10 journey with the National Enablement Programme. And around about 2018, I was working on, well, I was heading up because I was the only one working on it, a major project in West Yorkshire Police around agile working. And I'd grown a sort of a seed colony of agile workers from 500 up to well, it's beyond 3,000 now. And again, what was exciting about that was the way that a laptop could change somebody's work experience fundamentally, make the job easier, work from home, save a little bit of money at a time when, you know, money was tight and pay rises were nowhere to be seen. And it was from rolling those out face to face with my customers that I really saw how this technology platform was doing fabulous things. And about that same time, my boss collared me and said, there's a conference. I want West Yorkshire to be represented. I'll send you some details. So I opened this email, and this email was about disability confident, and my heart sank, to be honest, David. I knew nothing about disability, and I certainly wasn't confident. I'd had no idea what this conference was about, but I'd been given a 3-line whip. So I got in a hire car and travelled down to Wales. And it was a Microsoft disability conference. And it was perhaps one of the most inspirational things I've ever been to. It was very cleverly staged, disabled people talking about their life journey and talking about how assistive technology had effectively changed their lives. And I was just inspired. And this wasn't conference buzz. I'm used to that. You know, we all come back to Force thinking, oh, I must buy this, I must get that product. It wasn't that. I felt this was something fundamentally different. And having had sight of the 365 product and its capabilities, I came back to Force inspired and absolutely determined at the most profound level I could do something with this product within my own organization. So that's kind of how it started. I blundered about for ages, knocking on doors, showing this product. You know, I was just I was a man on a mission, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. And you need to sit through my really boring tech demo, but I'm going to show you this anyway, whether you want to or not. And Microsoft were kind enough to assist us with an in-force sort of mini conference where I was able to demo these products with Microsoft assistance to my colleagues. And I suppose what really opened the door was talking to my occupational health unit. I can talk to that if you want, David, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, please do.
So I thought OHU was all-seeing, all-knowing. And in fact, it turns out they're doctors and nurses, and they're really good if you've got a broken leg or you know, possibly even a broken mind. But what I didn't realize was when it comes to neurodivergency, they're probably no more expert than we are. So I'm going to talk about dyslexia, if you don't mind, because it is the commonest form of adjustment I'm asked to do. I'd say 90% of my customers have neurodivergent conditions, and it's usually dyslexia. So the journey in West Yorkshire, if you identified as dyslexic, was, well, first of all, we don't believe you. You're clearly just after a free laptop. We'll send you off to OHU and they'll sort you out. In fact, OHU, because they didn't have that specialism, would refer them out to a third-party organisation who would screen for dyslexia, and they would come back to Force clutching a work-based needs assessment. And these work-based needs assessment were from this third-party organisation. Well, it might have been, they might as well have sent back an order for a goblin army to invade Mordor, because they came back to Force. Half the software on there we can't use in a secure environment or for information security purposes. The other half was costed out in thousands of pounds. And I must say straight away that money was never a barrier, and saving money was never an object here. But in this process, the person just got lost. Some of them actually gave up on their work-based need. You know, it never got implemented. IT threw up barriers. Local budget holders, devolved budget holders, threw up more barriers. Who's going to pay for all this? And we need a senior officer to sign off on this kind of thing. And it was just a mess. It was awful. And these were people I knew I could help within minutes. Give me a laptop, give me Office 365 and Windows 10. I can sit this person down, I can familiarize them with the accessibility tools, and they're off, they're running. That's all they need. They don't need loads of third-party software. This third-party provider was suggesting Rolls-Royce solutions for mini problems. For somebody with mild to moderate, even severe dyslexia, they were recommending the industry standard. There's nothing wrong with that, and we still occasionally do use the industry standard. But I was determined I could do most of what these products do using 365, and that was the start for 10. And we started getting the people who came back with a work-based needs assessment. The key in this Force, it's always money, and it's horrible. It doesn't have to be money, but the key for me was the local business managers. I got them on board and said, please don't go spend £4,500 to £5,000 per customer until I've had a chance to sit down and show them this. If it's not good enough, we'll go out and we'll spend that money. But I think what I can do is good enough. And I've got.
I think one of the points is, isn't it, Richard, that the tools you're using are built into the license anyway.
Exactly. They're not free. Of course, we're paying for this product. Of course we are. But it's like having a free tool. And it's like having a tool there and then. It doesn't take me weeks and months to get it through my IT security guys to clear it for use on our systems. It doesn't take me, another 2 weeks to find a computer engineer who's got the time to install it onto a laptop for me. And it's simple and it's easy and it's quick. And that was where I wanted to be.
So in terms of all these functions are by default available and they're in the blueprint for every force to use, but what sort of functionality off the top of your head are most have the biggest impact? Some of the basic ones perhaps.
The key ones, again, if I speak to dyslexia, because it just covers every base, really does dyslexia. Dictate, read aloud, the immersive tools. And in particular, immersive tools now are available in the Edge browser. So, if you had difficulty reading, you can go into the Edge browser, put immersion on, and you've immediately got, content that's accessible to you. If I had nothing else, if you took everything else away, I'd have those three, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I must admit, I use the read aloud back quite a lot. Sometimes I'll use dictate, and it's it uses the same sort of engine that we use for our transcriptions, etc. So there's some real power in those tools that we, even if you don't have an accessibility need, they can have some real benefit for you.
Yes, absolutely. And regardless of that, I mean, I was blessed with hands like shovels. My touch typing is more like somebody brain nails into a fence. I'm an awful touch typist. I use dictate because it overcomes, a fundamental lack of skill on my part. And read aloud. If you're writing a memo to the boss, save as draft and read aloud. Definitely helps with tone and content.
Absolutely right. Now, Simon, you've been doing some work nationally on this. I'm going to bring you in. And what sort of reaction have you been getting from the national groups who've been made aware of the tools that are available now?
I think that it's been really positive, and it's been supported by the work that Richard's been doing in West Yorkshire, because Richard's a member of a group that we've set up now called the National Digital Accessibility Working Group. And that came about as a result of contact that we had with Tamsin Drury, who's the accessibility lead down in Hampshire Police, and her concerns about how the Microsoft 365 set and the NEP designs impacted on accessibility needs in forces. So we built on that, working with people like Richard and from a variety of other forces. We set up this smaller group, and then we were able last week to have a bigger workshop where there was something around 40 people on the call. We had the national lead for disability, the Deputy Chief Constable Amanda Blakeman on the call to open that session, to showcase to people what's going on in the wider disability world and also the neurodiversity world. And we were then able to start to sort of spread the work that we're doing around the initial work of the NDORG, as we call it, from just 365 into wider stuff around disability across policing. And out of that is going to be coming, I think, quite a bit of work for forces, but also for things like PDS about how we can support forces in the future. So that's been really positive. And whilst we've had two different approaches to start with the approaches of forces that are looking at those products that you can go out and get and use for policing, like Richard's talked about in the early part of his presentation today, but also about the way that Richard's doing this by leading into the 365 product set first. Does that meet your needs? And if it does, then fantastic. But if it doesn't, we're still happy to support you, and we will support you to get those other products in. And what that does is it highlights 365, but it also means that forces have the opportunity, I think, to focus their spending in areas where they really need it.
And that's one of the points I'll come back to you, Richard, on is that yes, you've got the tools built in and you can use lots of them, but that hasn't reduced your overall spend in terms of addressing accessibility needs. You've been able to perhaps reinvest and redeploy what you're doing to serve more people.
It was more about spend avoidance than genuine savings, David. I'd be open about that, but £4,500 to £5,000 per referral, and there was £400 fee for the referral on top of that. That was money when times have been tough in policing budgets that I felt quite resentful for, because they would go out, get the work-based needs assessment, which is an essential tool. A person needs that for that reasonable adjustment. But then we were just throwing money at the problem rather than thinking about this intelligently. Most of my customers did not need Dragon or Read Write Gold and all the expensive training that the person may or may not go to, and the advanced features of these products are impressive, and sometimes they are needed, but not every time. So by doing this, by avoiding that £4,500 to £5,500 spend every time, we save somewhere, it's well over £1 million now that we haven't given to this third party provider and kind of offshored the problem for our staff. Myself and a colleague who was similarly motivated by this have done these familiarization sessions for our people. We sit them down, we spend an hour going through it, and that saved that cost. But I do stress that wasn't the intention. But what we have been able to do with the support of my diversity and inclusion team, who were big in this, we went back to our chief officer team and said, look, we've been avoiding spending all this money. There was a surplus in the occupational health budget. Please, can we reinvest some of this in providing a better service? One of the key issues we had was supply chain for laptops. Sometimes we had thousands, other times we had none. And at the times we had none, it was really, really difficult to get somebody a device to begin their reasonable adjustment with. So we bought a small stock of laptops. They're now exhausted, but I'm hoping to get some more that helped us smooth that supply chain. They were under lock and key under my control, and I said who got one, so they couldn't go out into the general population. So that smoothed the journey. It meant I could do an adjustment within minutes. Honestly, within minutes, I could be onto a computer engineer, have the laptop configured for that user, and sit them down and do a session with all in one day. And that was my ambition. It's no good coming in for a reasonable adjustment on the Monday, and in one case it was 2 years before that was actually actioned and dealt with. That's rubbish. That's awful. Can you imagine that person's journey? So I'm amazed they still work for us. So we were able to do that. And then the other thing is we brought our dyslexia screening in-house with the help of Hampshire. Actually, they are very, very alert to neurodiversity, and they were able to train up 14 assessors in West Yorkshire. That cost us some money, which we paid for from those savings, and we now do our own in-house dyslexia assessment, create our own work-based needs assessment. So it is a realistic document, and our starter for 10 is always we'll use 365 unless. And I can tell you now, in that 400 odd, I lost track because this became organic and I wasn't tracking it as perhaps I should have done. In that 400 odd customers base, we have reached for an off-the-shelf software 3 times. Once for dyslexia, once for severe visual impairment, and once for it was neurodiversity again. Actually, it was a neurodiverse condition. So otherwise we've used 365, and the feedback from my customers is fabulous. It's doing a job for us.
And I think what people don't realise, and there's a couple of questions in the chat I'll come to in a second, keep them coming in. Most of the tools are actually switched on and available by default. That you need to read aloud and things like that are usually just there and available to be used, aren't they?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, and our information management specialists were really supportive of this. I didn't get blockages, or you can't use that, you can't possibly do that. We had a little bit of a conversation with our professional standards department, because if you use Dictate, the software that might track keystrokes that allow PSD to see what you've been up to, if you use Dictate, it doesn't record your keystrokes, obviously, because you're using your voice. But that's a risk we've accepted and moved on from. There are other ways of tracking what an individual's been doing if they are motivated by the wrong things. They want to do us harm, they want to be criminal, or they just want to engage in misconduct. We can deal with that in other ways. So we've had a really sensible and grown-up conversation in West Yorkshire about this, and I'm proud that colleagues have stood up and supported me and supported our disabled colleagues to get the adjustments that they want and need.
Thank you. And I'm going to bring Jolie in a second from Microsoft, because there's a question from Nikki in West Mercia about, is there a list of 365 apps that can replace the commercial offerings like Dragon Pro, etc.? But the reality is it's not really a 365 app. It's what's built into 365 anyway, isn't it, Jolie?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on, David. Yep, so all of the accessibility features that we're hearing about today are all built into those applications already. So it's just a case, like David said, to go and find those. We've got loads of links and support and kind of step-by-step guides to go and find those for you, whether it be for hearing, learning, vision, neurodiversity. So we'll share those links with you. And yeah, like I said, it's just within those applications. So it's not something that's built on top. It's built within, and it's there ready for you to use whenever you need to.
And I think one of the important points is that it's the same tooling across your 365 apps. So if you're needing to use the dictation or the read aloud, that works across the same environment. You've not got to keep moving it on, switch it over, have things running in the background, or the technical problem of having things connected in the background. Simon, I'll come to you in a second. There's a question there about, is there a one-off payment? But to reinforce the point, this is all built in the standard licenses that Forces have got, isn't it?
Yeah, it's there already. So you can go into those accessibility tools as part of the 365 set that your Forces have already taken on.
And there's a question in about sharing links to the national groups. Will we be able to share some of that and reach out to people?
Yeah, I've put my email address into the chat. If people would like to email me, then we'll get the details of the next workshops out to people when they're planned. Probably going to be quarterly. The working group meets a little bit more regularly.
This is probably a question for Jolie from Jen around, is there a tool that would support someone who uses the wrong word but grammatically still correct in forms to correct a sentence? You know, I think Grammarly is one of the tools that sometimes people use, but that does process the data outside of the UK, etc., and does cause us some issues. But is there any other Microsoft tools that might be helpful in this space?
I think Richard is ready to step in
definitely.
there.
Here comes Richard then. Let's put Richard.
Definitely Smart Lookup for a kickoff. Smart Lookup nips out to the web and corroborates the word that you're trying to use. The advanced spell checker and thesaurus functions. The fact that you know, if you right click on a word, it will bring up synonyms. So try it now. Type tree into Word, right click on it, and it will offer you synonyms. It's very, very easy to verify the word that you're looking at. What I also love is that the spell checker, the advanced spell checker, picks up phonetic spelling as well as grammatical spelling. So trying to, you know, if you are dyslexic, you will recognize trying to spell elephant with an F instead of a PH. The spell checker gets that. Try spelling physics, FIZICKX. It picks it up, it knows. So yes, yeah, definitely. Wrong word, misspelt words, very, very powerful bit of software running behind it. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, I like the read, and this is where the read aloud comes in as well on this thing. There's a question here about from Dan. Is forced to move into a lot of work being completed on mobile devices, Android, etc. Are the 365 capabilities available in the mobile environments as well?
I've got to look at that, yeah, David. To be honest, I'm working on a project. We're changing our VPN solution. Our new VPN will allow us to put 365 on our mobile offering. I'm interested to see what carryover there will be on the mobile device of the accessibility tools. So I'm going to answer that by saying I've got more work to do.
And Simon's come back and said he's checked them on his Samsung Note 9 and they're available. And I think majority of the tools that, you know, it's very technology agnostic, the 365 environment. It's designed to be worked on the mobile. So, you know, if it's not there now, I'm sure it's coming down the line and most of the functionality is. So, you know, you can use it very well. A nice question here for you, Richard, from Joanna. Did you find any obstacles in obtaining support for extra equipment, i.e. bigger screens, mics, headsets, to use in terms of accessibility?
No. I'm in an organisation where everybody was trying to do the right thing. It was just confusion that was causing the issues, I think. So it might be there was the odd unsympathetic, unsupportive supervisor, but most of the time it's because that supervisor had a member of their team that needed help and they weren't quite sure where to turn. So no, budget was never an issue. COT did knock me down on the bid I made for the number of laptops to smooth the supply chain. I think they've reflected on that and realised that they were given a little bit of misinformation, and I think they've realised they gave too few because they've exhausted that supply. I think if I go back again, they'll be more generous. Well, we are going back again to ask for that stock. It just makes it so much easier, and it stops grubby arguments about money by devolved budget holders. It's not your money; it's wooden dollars after all. But it did used to be a barrier, you know, where people who's paying for this? Well, you are, and it's a legal obligation. So get your checkbook out. But it slowed things down, and I'm sorry, that's not good enough. If you approach us and you're open and say, I have a disability, I need help, why the hell would we mess about getting you that help?
Yeah, and I think the fact that you can have all these tools available, a lot of the time, if we can promote the tools that are available and people can use them, people who don't need them or perhaps don't want to identify themselves as needing them can start using them and get the benefit from them as well. So there's quite a lot in there. There's a couple more questions coming in, and we do ask you to urge you to get in touch with ourselves at PDS. Richard will help you out as well. If you've been inspired to learn more, there is the accessibility section we've opened up today on the Enabling Centre. There's so much content on the Microsoft platform itself. If you go there, they'll talk about the ways you can watch little videos on how to use these tools. We are getting close to the time now, so we'll start talking about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, and thanks to Richard and Jolie, we'll come back to you in a second. But next week we're taking a slightly different tack again. We're going to bring into the National Standards team, and it's a really important area of business, and don't think it's all about the techie or the analysts bit. Everybody who's leading anything around change or transformation of business systems would really benefit from understanding where the standards are at. The standards allow us to work together. There has to be a standard somewhere to say that the number of characters in a name field need to be the same length, so we can actually get the systems talking to each other. One of the big pains we all have is that data is held in one system and doesn't always match up to another system. This is where standards are beginning to really transform the environment, and we're doing this openly with the technology industry as well. So the standards are actually published on the PDS site without the need to log in. So the industry themselves can come in, look at the standards. So if you're about to kick off a procurement for a new piece of technology, what we should be doing is making sure that we're procuring against those standards so that in the future everything else can connect together. But it goes so much more than that. So come to us next week and you can actually help be consulting on the standards that are being developed, understand where they are and how to access them and how to use them for your benefit. The week after, we've got Tom's top tips. Tom Connor, who joined us last week for Federation, is going to go through some of the points that some of the easy wins in terms of using 365 that we see when we're on calls with colleagues that are perhaps not aware of some of the advantages there. So a little session with Tom's top tips, and just a reminder of some of the workshops. We have got an internal comms workshop, we've got our collaboration workshop which takes us forward from the Federation and all the other things we talked about on the 8th of March as well. All the details for those are on the transformation.police.uk/events website, and that's where you can register for those sessions, and we do want you to get involved. And as mentioned before, we always want to hear from you about what you want us to cover in these webinars, or if you've got something like Richard had where you want to share, just fill in the feedback form, reach out to myself, Mike or Simon, and we can pick that up with you and do some more. Just another reminder, the Police Digital Summit is now available for booking, so you can now get yourself a ticket to join us in May. Where we'll be bringing everything together. So please do think about registering if you're able to join us. Thanks to Richard for joining us. It's been amazing to hear your story, and if nothing else helps to win the argument, the fact that you're able to help your staff more and not cost more is a huge benefit. So that's a big thank you to you and what you've achieved over in West Yorkshire. Hope to see you all next week, and join us then and we'll talk more about standards. Speak to you soon.